Bet Online brings you this Believe in Boise State Football Kingdom of Pod. Welcome to game week for the University of Wyoming with Boise State. Jeff Caves, as you know, here in Flower Mound, Texas, far away from Laramie. Pretty cold here, and I can remember even colder days and nights in Laramie with Boise State. The weather's expected to be about 23 degrees at kickoff Saturday. By the end of that game, it should be about 17 degrees. So colder than Nevada, but the key will be the sledding will be much easier. There should not be any snow, and there'll be clear skies. Yeah, some guys struggle in the cold. Specifically, you're most concerned about your skill guys. So many kids from Texas at wideout, and of course, Green at quarterback, and Genty at running back. But here in the area where all those kids are from, it gets pretty cold. They have some cold nights, so it's not like they're completely foreign to that. The motivation for the game, though, is really pretty simple. We know Wyoming's usually always motivated, and this is no exception. Boise State, though, is trying to win the Mountain Division, playing the championship for the Mountain West game. They can do that. If they were to beat Wyoming, it won't matter what they do against Utah State next week. And for Wyoming, they've got to beat Boise State, and then they go on the road against Fresno, which I think will be a very difficult game for them to play for a title. We'll talk about one of the best matchups, I think, in this game. Really favors Boise State and would even favor Fresno State to a greater degree. I was reminded of the safety dance game, which was quite a while ago now. And in 2016, both these teams were 3-0. You had a great quarterback and two great quarterbacks at Rip and Josh Allen. It just didn't work out for Boise State that particular night. They were the 13th ranked team in the country. Both were 3-0. Wyoming ultimately, played out and won out the Mountain Division and played for a Mountain West championship. Boise State did not. And so the games are similar, but I think really different. For Boise State to come in as the hunted group that night with a quarterback they knew could beat them, that's different than this group. I think they have a lot of confidence in their defense and running the football. But on that particular year with Josh Allen, they could throw it, they could run it, he could run it. They had defense, they had NFL guys at tight end and quarterback and running back and linebacker and safety. That team was loaded. That was one of the better Wyoming teams you're ever going to see. So there are similarities, but I think much different. So far, Wyoming has played well of late. This team has won 4 games in a row now, 3 on the road, albeit against New Mexico, Hawaii, and Colorado State, all bad teams. And I've heard it from enough people confirming that this is a real down year for the Mountain West Conference. And great quarterback play is few and far between. I think that's one of the biggest issues. And it may come around in the next couple of years, but right now, certainly that's not the case. So I think for Boise State, this is a game they should win. I mean, the odds makers are putting them up by a couple of touchdowns. This isn't too different of a Wyoming team than we've seen in the past. This is a group that will rely on the run game, stopping the run, defense area to go to Wyoming. He could end up in the NFL. He's only a sophomore. Be fun to see what he does. So one of the keys for the game, I think, is I look at Boise State has played well in the Cutter era of offensive coordination for the 22 season with a lead. They've led most of the quarters and most of the games that since he's been the OC. Wyoming specializes in not having the lead. They've come back in 5 games this year and won when they were trailing by an average of 10 points. It's 10-4, 14-10, and 10. And they've come back to win. When it comes to common opponents, and you compare Wyoming and Boise State, they both lost to BYU, and they both beat Air Force, Colorado State, and New Mexico. And the scores are literally identical in a lot of, maybe with the exception of the Colorado State game. And that's a border war for Wyoming, right? So Fort Collins and Laramie right next to each other, they go at it. They have a brass boot. They got a whole thing. A different kind of game for them. So it looks like on paper these teams are fairly equal. When it comes to throwing the football, though, that's where it stops. The Wyoming quarterback had a concussion, Peasley, last week. No word on whether he's going to play or not. You know, quarterbacks and concussions, it's unlikely he'll play. I just think it's not a great look. The other kid who won last week for Wyoming, Clemens, has only played in 3 games. So that's not a great combination to bring him into a game with a very experienced defense at Boise State. So I don't like Wyoming's chances there. If I look at it and say, what should happen in this football game? I think Boise State should get off to a lead like they normally have. I think they're going to throw the football. Most others have on Wyoming. It's harder to run the football on them. They have new corners this year. Yes, Hawkins and Stone have started almost every game this year, but they weren't there last year. One's a transfer from Ole Miss. And I think that Cutter could be ready to unleash Green. And, you know, if Wyoming is allowing 224 yards through the air per game, that's about what Green can do really efficiently and then run off of that. So I think Cutter's licking his chops here. We'll find out if Wyoming can rush the passer, defend the pass, can Boise State block the blitz. If I had to lean one way or the other, everybody expects this to be some kind of slugfest at the line of scrimmage. But Dirk doesn't go with expectations and what everybody thinks should or shouldn't happen. He simply wants to win the game. And if he looks at those 2 corners and he'll break down every explosive play, he'll have it all fed to him. And he knows his strengths of his kids. If he sees either Hawkins or Stone getting beat on certain routes consistently because somebody was giving up those 224 yards, and I just stated, there's not a lot of great quarterbacks in this conference. What's a kid like Green going to be able to do? I don't think the wind will be a factor. 10 to 15 mile an hour wind isn't a big deal. Over 15 miles an hour, okay, starts something that you think about. But 10 miles an hour, no. So I like Green here. I think Dirk could maybe unleash the beast. This is the time to do it. This is the opponent. And I don't know that they would necessarily be expecting it. So that would be my prediction. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong again, but that made the most amount of sense to me. Get a lead. That'll kill Wyoming. Yes, they can still come back, but can they defend the pass? Can they defend the pass? But Boise State's most comfortable with the lead. Once you've established that you can get some things done through the air and through the ground, and you've got a lead, that's going to put a lot of pressure on a quarterback who's only in his 3rd game for the University of Wyoming. I will talk to you after the game. This is the Believe Boise State podcast that I put out once or twice a week. I usually try to put one out before and after the game. I will be able to do that this Sunday for the Boise State Wyoming decision. So I appreciate you guys joining me. Thanks to Bet Online. We'll talk to you then.